Hello, this is Charles Folkart, November 25th, 2017. I welcome all of you. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for supporting this channel. Anyone new here, I welcome you, and I hope you get something out of these videos. This is going to be the third video in a series of videos on the Israelites, the pre-Exodus migration, or the pre-Exodus with Moses, the pre-flight of the Israelites out of Egypt before the Exodus with Moses. Now, the first video I did on this series with Mr. Daniel Walsh and his Lost Tribes of Israel maps was done many months ago, and I just haven't had a chance to get back to it. There's a lot of things happening in my life, and if you watch my series On the Road with Charles Folkart, you'll get that. But I'm going to upload at the same time I upload this video, the second in the series, and I suggest you watch that video before you watch this video. And don't forget, you can speed them up. You can go to 1.25 on the little wheel down there, the little gear. You can speed it up if you want to get through it a little quicker. And then this is the third in the series. The second video, I'm going to name it something like the Pre-Flight Exodus and the Zerah branch of the kings in Egypt. Something like that. And then this one's going to be called the why is Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia et al. Why are they lying to us by omission about the history that they must know about, the history given to us by Diodorus Siculous? And that last name, Siculous, comes from, indicates that he comes from Sicily. And others, one other historian is Herodotus. And why are they lying to us by omission? Why are they leaving out the history of the Caucasian race, the history of the Greeks? And why are they calling it a myth? And we're going to get into that in this video. But before we do that, I want to make a couple of corrections on the previous video. I mentioned that if I wasn't mistaken, that the eagle was the symbol of the tribe of Judah, and that's not true. And I corrected it on the video. But if you only heard and didn't watch, you would miss that. The eagle is the symbol of the tribe of Dan, not Judah. Number two, the pre-flight migration, the pre-flight exodus increased as the friction between the Israelites and the Egyptians increased. And you'll have to watch the second video in the series to understand what I mean by that. I don't think I made that clear. And number two, when I made the quotes, and I was quoting out of Josephus and out of the maps here, I substituted the word Judahite or Judeans because the authors use the word Jews, and I believe that they are mistaken. And so I just wanted to clarify that. So let's move on to the points I want to make, shall we? Now, in order for this video to be on its own, to stand on its own, I'm going to have to quote again what I quoted yesterday. And I apologize that I can't scan this because I don't have my scanner with me. But I want to quote this. It's important. And so please bear with me. And this is a quote out of Mr. Walsh's Bible study maps. And he's quoting Diodorus Siculous. And I'm going to put his name below here when I edit. Ancient Greeks and Egyptians were well acquainted with more than one Exodus. For example, one Greek historian, Diodorus Siculous, circa 80 to 20 BC, tells of several flights to freedom in his series of books called the Library of History. In one reference to the Israelite, Book 40, number 3, Diodorus says that the aliens were driven from the country of Egypt, that the most outstanding and active among them banded together, and they were cast ashore in Greece and certain other regions, that their leaders were notable men, chief among them being Danaus and Cadmus, but that the greater number were driven into what is now called Judea, and that colony was headed by a man called Moses. Another segment of his books, Book 1 and number 28, Diodorus records certain claims made by the Egyptians. They claim that great numbers of colonies were spread from Egypt over all the inhabited world. That was around the Mediterranean Sea area. That the exiles led by Danaus settled what is practically the oldest city in Greece, Argos. Now that's important, and please keep that in mind, that the Egyptians say that the exiles led by Danaus, that's spelled D-A-N-A-U-S, settled what is practically the oldest city of Greece, Argos. That the nation of the Cholti in Pontus was that of the Judeans, and again I substitute Judeans for the word Jew, were established by certain immigrants from their country, meaning Egypt. And that even the Athenians are, quote, colonists from Sais in Egypt. The city of Sais is located in the Nile Delta. That's where the Israelites were from. That's where, when Joseph was number 2 in Egypt, he settled his family there in the area of Sais, and it's referred to in Scripture as Goshen. The Colchi in Pontus is Colchis, on the eastern shore of the Black Sea. And there's other historians that he quotes, but I don't need to go into that to make my point here. So let's go have a look at, well, before I do that, I was reading yesterday, after I uploaded the video that is previous to this one, I was reading in the introduction of the copy I have of the Iliad by Homer, and I didn't quote all of this yesterday, and I'm going to continue that quote. I'm going to read the whole thing. It's not that long. Sometime about 36 or 3,700 years ago, historians say, the first Greek tribes of whom we have any knowledge of came down from the northern mountains into the coasts and plains of what was later called Greece. And I pointed out that that's error. That's just an assumption on their part. They have no facts to back that up. They did not call themselves Greeks, but Achaeans, or sometimes Danans, D-A-N-A-A-N-S. The folk, and this is what I want to point out, the folk, that is, of a mythical king, Danaus, D-A-N-A-U-S, prolific in daughters. They were a bold, untamed, half-civilized race, but the people they proceeded to conquer had for some centuries been a part of a rich Aegean civilization centered in the southern island of Crete. See, they ignore the fact that Diodorus Siculous mentions that the Egyptians say that the Israelites that migrated away from Egypt, from Sais, they founded Argos. Now and there's other cities that they founded. They also were in Athens, etc. So the point I want to make here is that the average person doing some research or who reads this, they're led to believe that the Greeks that are in Homer, that Homer writes about, were myths and legends. They weren't true. They weren't fact. They were a myth. It was, the myth like the Holocaust is a myth, and the myth like 19 heirs with box cutters pulled off the attack on 9/11. See, they're saying that history is a myth. So let's go look at, if I want to study and I want to back up, you want to go and do some research to support or to verify or to confirm what I'm revealing to you here, you're going to go to, on a search probably online in Google, and you're going to find out what Wikipedia has to say and other sources like Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, who's going to argue with a source like Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia, right? Everybody, a lot of people think, oh my God, if it's in Encyclopedia Britannica, it must be true. Well, let's go have a look at those two sources, shall we? Okay, so I went on the phone and I typed in Danaus, Danaus, which is the same term used in the introduction here that I read in Homer, the king, and this introduction calls him the mythical king. And I went here and I used Bing, and it brought me to Google. I used both Bing and Google, and they both say the same thing. It's right here on the phone. In Greek mythology, Danaus was the twin brother of Aegyptus, not sure how to pronounce that, a mythical king of Egypt. The myth of Danaus is a foundation legend of Argos. It's a legend. See, it's not true. It's a myth. One of the foremost Mycenaean cities of the Peloponnesus. So there we have one source. The very first thing you find when you type in that name, Danaus, it's a myth. Even though we read Diodorus Siculous, and the Egyptians refer to him as fact. So there also in Wikipedia, I want to put it up there, you'll see it says the same thing. It's just a repeat, and it's a myth, according to Wikipedia. And this king, this mythical king right here, had many daughters. And it even mentions that in Homer's The Iliad, and I believe it also mentions that in, or is quoted or mentioned by Diodorus Siculous. So they are the average individual is going to go, if he even thinks about it at all, and is going to go to these, it's going to go online and is going to look at Wikipedia and Encyclopedia Britannica, and they're going to hear that it's a myth. Okay, so here we have Encyclopedia Britannica, and I typed in Danaus, D-A-N-A-U-S. I don't know if that's pronounced Danaus or Danaus. Danaus, in Greek legend, the son of Belus, king of Egypt, and twin brother of Aegyptus. Driven out of Egypt by his brother, he fled with his 50 daughters. So there we have, it's a legend, and I clicked on legend. So I'm looking at legend. A traditional story or group of stories told about a particular person or place Formerly, the term legend meant a tale about a saint. Legends resemble folk tales in content. They may include supernatural beings, elements of mythology, or explanations of natural phenomena. So I did a search for Diodorus Siculous, and this is what I get on the very first page on the Bing search. And I'm going to flip it down here so you see. This is what people are going to get. They're going to get the second source is Encyclopedia Britannica, and the third source is Wikipedia. Now I'm going to I already looked at this. I'm going to go back to Diodorus Siculous in Encyclopedia Britannica. This was put together by the editors of Encyclopedia Britannica. He was a Greek historian, the author of a universal history known as the library, or known in Latin as Bibliotheca Historica, that ranged from the age of mythology. See, it's saying it began with myths. Diodorus Siculous' history started with a myth and went to 60 BC. Diodorus lived in the time of Julius Caesar and Augustus, and his own statements make it clear that he traveled in Egypt during 60 to 57 BC and spent several years in Rome. The latest event mentioned by him belongs to the year 21 BC. His history consisted of 40 books, of which 1 to 5 and 11 to 20 survive, and was divided into 3 parts. He outlined his plan in Book 1. Books 1 to 6 treat the mythic history of the non-Hellenic and Hellenic tribes to the destruction of Troy. And then Books 7 to 17 end with Alexander's death, and Books 18 to 40 continue the history as far as belonging to Caesar's Gallic Wars. We have Wikipedia, and we have the blind leading the blind, and I'm just going to quote one part. The book, Bibliotheca Historica, is arranged in 3 parts. The first part covers mythic history up to the destruction of Troy. Now, there is the 10-year Trojan War a myth, or did it actually happen? The other writers I'm reading, Walsh, and other books I'm reading, they say that the war between the Spartans and the Trojans was a civil war, was a hostile conflict between the Hebrews. They're both the same people, folks, and it's very, very easy to comprehend the fact there could have been a 10-year war. We have a 16, 17-year war going on now in Afghanistan. World War II started in 1939 in Germany, which was actually an extension of World War I, with an interview, with a intermission, if you will. So World War I actually lasted close to 6 years. So is it two? And there was the 30 Years' War later. So it's not inconceivable that there was a war that lasted between the Spartans and the Trojans that lasted 10 years. Folks, it was a fact. And Diodorus Siculous, he mentions it, and he refers to the Egyptians who talk about the Israelites who leave Egypt and they go and found certain areas, certain city-states in Greece and Crete and other areas in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. But both Encyclopedia and the other links I went to, including Wikipedia and the Encyclopedia Britannica, all lie by omission. They don't mention anything about the tribe of Dan and the Israelites leaving Egypt. Folks, that's why we Caucasians, we Israelites, those of us of the 12 tribes of Israel, don't know our history, because it has been kept from us all of our life, And the people who control the media, control the encyclopedias, control Wikipedia, they lie by omission. And they also lie saying that this is a myth, blah, 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 blah. Folks, the truth is getting out, and they don't want us to hear it. And I want to mention something about this guy, Kapner. You know, everybody, a lot of people, and there's a lot of comments that I don't approve, and there's a lot being said that attacks me because I attack and I go after Kapner and put the parentheses around Kapner. He's a racial Esau Edomite, folks. They don't change their stripes. A scorpion is always a scorpion. And again, on this channel, on this video, I'm alleging that Kapner is controlled opposition, and he's not going to tell you all the truth. Everything that Kapner is telling you about his fellow Esau Edomites, we don't need Kapner to tell us how evil and how wicked and how much these Esau Edomites have ruined our world. We don't need him. We already know that. We can go to John, we can go to Genesis 3:15, we can go to many, many other sources to find out what these Esau Edomites have done and are doing to our world. And I am sick and tired of you shills coming on this channel and making your comments and defending that Esau Edomite. He's a liar. I believe he's committing fraud. And I know quite a bit more about Kapner than most of you do. So unless you've got a comment that actually brings out the facts about where and how this Esau Edomite is actually telling you truth that we can't find any other way, I'm not going to approve your comments because I'm sick and tired of it. Can you tell? I do want to thank you for watching. I do want to thank you for subscribing. You know, you might want to send a video or two of these to some pastor, some Judeo-Christian pastor. Just ask him for his comments. It'll be entertaining to find out what he has to say. Again, may the grace of God our Father, the Father of Abraham, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were not Jewish, the God of the tribe of Dan, the God who was the God of the Israelites who migrated out of Egypt. That's why they became pagan, folks. They didn't go with Moses into the land of Judea, the promised land with Joshua and the rest of them. So they didn't have all that background of the law and the miracle of going through the Red Sea and all the plagues that happened to the poor Israelites as they remained in Egypt. There's so much more here that a lot of us don't understand, and we don't know our own history, folks, because we're being lied to. Everything you think you know is a lie. May the grace of our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may his grace be upon us all. For wouldn't you agree, we most certainly need it. See ya.